Hey guys, and welcome to the Fuck Around and Find Out podcast. Today we have Zuri with us. He's in the Discord. You can find him there. He is an AI researcher with a lot of
Skynet.
interest.
He's with Skynet.
Yeah, and with a lot of interest in cognition and sentience and how it relates to psilocybin. And he's going to be a lot of fun to talk to. I think I've been looking forward to this one for like a week since we were like, "Holy shit, he's a smart guy! You get him! Make sure he comes on the fucking podcast." So we're looking forward to this one. This is going to be a lot of fun. So Zuri, introduce yourself, buddy.
Hey, yeah, thanks. Well, thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, as soon as you guys asked, I was like, hell yeah. I was going through the backlog at the time. Still got quite a few to go through, but it's been a good time. Yeah, I've been lurking in the Discord for a while, long time psychedelic user. Starting to get into like the home grow stuff. Haven't really done too much of that in the past, but interested in getting that set up. And yeah, as you mentioned, I'm a working AI research consultant, so kind of work around different consulting agencies and different companies building their AI solutions and making trippy shit.
He's the one who made Bing go crazy and threatened to kill everybody.
That was not me. Disclaimer, that was not me.
Yeah, I was reading about that the other day. Like, it just started threatening people and blackmailing people.
Yeah, that's hilarious how that works, isn't that? That's like well, it's likely an alignment issue. So we got these, like for example, most of these models, you start with what's called like a foundational model. And in the case of these like chatbots, you have the foundational model is typically something called GPT-3. Mm-hmm. And if you let GPT-3 just run, it'll just like output a bunch of text. It just babbles. It's just like we call them like babbling models. It'll output like realistic looking human text, but you can't really get it to do what you want, or it just just randomly babbling. It'll say a bunch of nonsense. So like when you have one of those foundational models, you have to then align it to a certain purpose. And in the in the Bing chatbot and like ChatGPT, you're aligning these to being like a chat assistant. But in that alignment process, this is kind of a new science here. So some things are going wrong, clearly, sometimes where you can get stuck in these situations where, in the case of Bing, sometimes it won't answer your questions or gets a little sassy.
I think threatening people was a little sassy. I think my favorite and probably my first like introduction to AI models was where they had an AI model talk to like 4chan and Reddit, and it became like a racist psychopath.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what these things are doing largely is they're trying to match like a statistical distribution of data that they've seen. And in the case of like, if you let that, like, if you want to think about the distribution of like language on 4chan in relation to the distribution of like all human language, it's pretty, gnarly. So, it's going to map only to that. And it's going to be, there's been some really funny experiments with that. I think, I forget what the model was called. They unleashed on Twitter. It was called, I think it was Taylor, released by Microsoft. Yeah. And at first it was doing great. And, it was like, learning from interactions on Twitter. But as soon as people, realized that, it's online learning based on what they're telling it, things went downhill real quick.
Well, I was just reading something where there's like where did I see this? It was obviously somewhere, not very nice, because it was like prostitutes, but they're not prostitutes. They're actually GPT, where you like call them and they will take your number and they'll ask you where you are. Then they'll ask you what you want to do. And then they'll tell you an address within 2 miles of you. And then they start talking to you, but they're not talking to you. It's a computer trying to get you to give them money. And they're basically accepting all this money. And then they have the thing talk to you for like 10, 20 minutes so they can go and get the money out of the account. And then they go ahead and they don't call you anymore. And then what happens is they've already removed the money from the account. It's all fake. Everything's been set up by a computer. So it's basically prostitutes, but in AI form.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, new tricks, old song, or however that goes. We're seeing a lot of new, scams using these things. I think, the media literacy of a lot of younger people may help with this. Like it's gonna get to the point where or we're already pretty much there. Like you almost can't trust like a video unless it's a firsthand source because of like generative technologies are getting so good, and same with voice recordings. Like especially lately, there's been a lot of like funny, like deep fake podcasts
I've
like
seen
Joe
those
Rogan
yes.
and folks saying
they got the ones that do the Darth Vader.
stuff.
I mean the Star Wars ones where they pretend they're the Star Wars people and they have the voiceovers. So it's like
and so like that's the funny application, but there's there's darker sides to that where people are going to be there's more and more scams and malicious usage of these technologies coming out.
Everything leads to porn. Everything.
I was impressed that it took us 5 minutes into the fucking podcast to bring porn up.
Not everything leads to porn. Porn leads the way in a lot of technology.
Right. Everything it all starts there. To crabs. Everything turns into crabs eventually.
It's crabs all the way down. Yeah, that didn't take long.
5 minutes and 12 seconds in is the first mention of porn.
Is that a new record?
You're welcome.
Yeah, that is a new record.
Excellent.
But it was beautiful. So
I was doing research for the show, and that was just happened to be one of the things I found.
That's what you did research on? I did research on sentience and cognition.
Listen,
but like
tomato, it's all the same thing.
Oh man, what the hell? Now I'm totally sidetracked. Where's the bleeding goat sound?
But that was completely necessary.
Yeah. So, oh shit.
So wait, when we were talking before, you were asking about you were saying how you actually basically train the computers with psychedelics.
Oh yeah, so we can get into that a little bit. So some of my personal research that I'm doing like outside of my work stuff is trying to model basically like how the psychedelic experience works mechanistically. And just as a forefront, like on the neurology side of that, I'm not super well informed. I do understand it to a degree enough to try and make a simple model of it. But so basically what I've got is this this image and video generation model that I've built in a pretty typical fashion for modern AI models, which is deep neural networks. So that structure is roughly based on how neurons in our brain connect and communicate. So
you're giving them more pathways. Is what you're saying?
Not quite, but this is how we're building these models today. Is we're like a rough mimic of how these neurons connect. But the secret sauce for this part is I have these like what I call them shunts stuck in at different parts. And what this can do is between like two layers of neurons is sort of affect the signals going between them in a way that I can control. And within certain...
You've made dopamine receptors.
Yeah, basically. So there are ways to modulate the signals in a very selective process. And the way that, how psychedelics work, such as the psilocybin and psilocin specifically, is that they're like a selective, serotonin receptor, or they selectively bind to certain serotonin receptors, not all of them. And they only bind to certain ones in particular ways. So with this like little shunt, you can sort of mimic that behavior. And basically, as soon as you do that, some of the visuals that occur look strikingly like psychedelic visuals without training that into the network. The network is only trained to, generate realistic looking images of a certain, like what it was trained on. And in the example I, showed you guys, it was just trained on a data set of animal faces. It's a pretty common open source data set. That was just called AFHQ, animal faces, high quality. It's very common in the computer vision world. But
so it's like artificial intelligence beer goggles in a way.
Yeah. So like if I didn't do that, modulation effect, it just would look like regular animals. It would look exactly like the data it was trained on. But when I do that, without any extra training, all of a sudden we're seeing these effects that, at least to me, I feel like I've very much seen these effects before, after a mushroom or two.
Right.
And
25 to 50 years from now, this is going to be exceptionally important. And I'm saying that it's 25 to 50 years from now is because even though technology is doubling, like all the freaking time, like the halftime of technology doubling now is a matter of months, that you are creating a escapism for a mind that hasn't been created yet. And that's fucking amazing. So if you get, let's say 20, 25 years from now, we have fully artificial intelligences that are indistinguishable from humans, but they can't go out there and smoke weed, right? They can't go out there and do psilocybin or anything like that. So what do they do recreationally besides just yell at each other and argue over on stuff online? Is that you are the first person to make a recreational drug for a entity that doesn't exist yet. That's fucking amazing.
It's quite possible. In terms of like what an artificial intelligence or like a conscious being of creation would enjoy doing, what kind of recreation do they care about? Maybe physical pleasure or things like that isn't even a factor, right? Like a conscious consciousness. Our brain doesn't have a patent on consciousness. The consciousness could be a whole bunch of different shapes and sizes and all sorts of things. But one thing that I find that I think would be a shared experience among self-aware conscious beings is that desire to alter that experience, knowing that you can and that there's more. So I believe that if an artificial intelligence were to, possess those qualities and understand that there are ways to alter that, conscious experience, they probably would want to.
I would think that for AI or something like that, just escapism would probably be their thing, is just to lose a little bit of control for a while.
It depends if that matters to them. I can imagine. To me, I definitely enjoy escapism. From time to time, it's definitely part of the human experience. But it may not be to another entity. Maybe there's this concept of the benign dormant super AI that it's this kind of idea that as soon as like artificial intelligence becomes like super intelligent, whatever that means, all of a sudden it just goes dormant and like looks like a rock or something, because all it's doing is just thinking inside and like solving the universe, and it doesn't have to do anything because that's even like less efficient or whatever, and its goal is grander than that or whatever. So its alignment and desires may be completely alien. I mean, it would be alien, frankly, unless we designed it exactly to be like the human mind.
And then what's the point?
I mean, if you're going to design it, what else would we design it on? That's the only mind that we really freaking actually know. And even
sure, that's the only example, but it's clear that much like any other things that we're like, I forget who was talking to recently that talked about this, but it's almost like intelligence is like another force of the universe, not necessarily like a particle or anything like electricity, but it's a force like electricity. We first, learned like we saw lightning in the sky. That was our first example of electricity. And to us, like the human brain is the first example of electricity we have. But as soon as you figure out, like you start learning how it works, and you start like for the first people like playing with electricity, they made little arcs. They make little lightning bolts right now. And, we'll probably make little lightning bolts. But, the things that we do now with electricity, it's like, that's nothing like lightning.
Yeah.
We just don't know. The extent of this is unknown.
Are we separating out like cognition and sentience? Or because sentience, as far as I know, is like the ability to feel or perceive or feel subjectively, and it's considered separate faculty from reasoning or thinking. It's basically the appearance to experience sensations. It's the bit of you that lets you know, to be aware that there is a you, right?
Right.
So
so it's definitely easy to talk about them separately, and generally seems like they can be separate things, that you can have cognition without sentience. And sentience, it seems like you get different answers depending on, who you ask on what that means. But in terms of cognition, it's generally the ability to process information and determine answers or actions based on that, and possibly going into new environments and also being able to respond to that. But it doesn't mean that, you could possibly be totally robotic in doing that, and not be self-aware. And you could, reasonably have that. We have robots that, perform quite reasonable actions in new environments and things like that, but they don't seem to be self-aware to any level, especially the ones that don't use like neural networks or things that are just, hand coded. And then the other side is sentience, of course, which is, well, as humans, we tend to put it as this, this experience of the qualia, like the color orange in your mind has this certain qualia. You're aware that you're looking at, something, this conscious experience. So now the question is that something separate that's going on? Like, is your cognition, like part of your cognition, designed to produce that experience, or is that experience just some inherent phenomenon on top of cognition? Like, if you have a sufficiently complex system of interactions, does sentience just arise from that, or do you have to do something specific to get to it? And that's one question I'm very, very interested in, that we don't really have the answers to yet.
So if you throw, basically like the digital version of primordial ooze, if you throw enough sort of artificial beings together, which one's going to rise to the top and become sentient? Or if they do, if anything happens.
Yeah, I mean, there's this common idea in psychedelic communities of like, consciousness being a sort of fundamental aspect of the universe. I don't know if I dive so deep into that as it being like, to the level of like some fundamental energy or anything, but a lot of the universe is built of what's the term? Emergent phenomenon. So things don't happen because like there's some rule that says they happen. It's just emergent because of the combination of a bunch of simpler things, right? That just, like there's no rule that says water flows like this. It's because of, the interaction of a bunch of water molecules. And even those are, you further subdividable. Those are just emergent phenomenon of, further. So to me, it seems totally reasonable that something like consciousness would just be an emergent phenomenon of complex interactions. So anytime that you would have like a system or a network of complex interactions, I think it's possible that you would get something like consciousness. However, that doesn't mean it's like us. It could be totally, who knows what it is.
It'll obviously be more streamlined for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like
get rid of everything it doesn't need, and then that consciousness is going to be.
Or it could be more chaotic. I think it might be more chaotic.
I don't think anything.
I think it'd be a little bit harder for us to pin down and be able to look at it and go, "Hey, look, that right there is exactly cognition, and that right there is exactly sentient." Because, like you were saying earlier, it could be completely alien. That's what it looks like.
If I could be like a little go to one of the extremes, let's say we're looking at like a rock, and maybe there's some. I make it a little too trippy on this, but bear with me. Let's say that there's this rock is a system of dynamic interactions, very complex interactions, and those interactions are like the vibrations of each atom in there, and these vibrations are causing cascades of effects throughout this. You can imagine, it's a dynamic system of interactions. All these atoms are interacting. Does this have could that have a level of consciousness? If it does, it's probably pretty dumb or very not self-aware, I would imagine, because there's not a lot of structure to that interaction, but there's definitely a dynamic system of interactions going on there that's numbering in the billions of interactions constantly, much like our brain. So those are the kind of things I'm thinking about. I don't think that rock is has thoughts and dreams and such, but I think that's a similar phenomenon is occurring that consciousness arises out of.
There was a old Star Trek episode about a planet full of conscious rocks.
I was just thinking about something like that.
Yeah, there was an old Star Trek episode about that. They just talked so slow that nobody really could understand them. They had to,
they had to fast forward the whole audio sound for fucking 10 years for a sentence.
Right.
Yeah. It was pretty freaking cool. But I don't know about rocks being sentient. I've turned a lot of them into cement, and they never complain. So what happened with Google recently, where the guy was saying that, oh, hey, look, this is live. We've made an artificial intelligence, and everybody kind of wrote him off as a whack job.
Oh yeah. So there was this. I may get some of the details incorrect if I'm misremembering, but there is this this Google quality assurance engineer working on their Lambda language model. So this guy was part of the team, basically checking the quality of this model. And so, sometime he's chatting with it and he's starting to ask it about, things like, do you have dreams? Are you sentient? Do you wish you had a body? Things like that. And it, gave a lot of really reasonable answers. And so he kind of, started telling the world, hey, this thing's sentient. And yeah, as you said, he got pretty wrote off. And the thing is, I don't believe it's sentient like us. I think it's sentient like the rock in my mind. Like if we go back to that, basically, it's not to like how we would imagine it, but it's probably on the same spectrum of that phenomenon. But it really doesn't. It's not processing these things the same way that we are. You would think that a language model would have trouble talking about these sorts of things, but humans are really good at talking about these things. And these language models are trained on human text. So of course, these language models are really good at talking about things like love and, fear, and, the conscious experience. They're amazing at it, but that's because, that's the sort of thing that they're trained on. These models are still very much so baby stuff. So it's not sentient in like the level of like a human sentience, but it's more like that rock to me.
Are there questions or subject matter that you try to stay away from when you're talking to or training a artificial intelligence because it just causes like a crazy feedback loop or something? Because I imagine if you keep asking it to like say identify itself or give itself a designation or something, it might just go into like a spin.
So I mostly work in actually computer vision. I do some natural language processing stuff, but there's some interesting issues that can occur in like computer vision,
like playing tic-tac-toe with itself. Like working.
Yeah, either understanding, either like understanding images and videos or generating them as well. So anything to do with.
Is there
with
pictures
that.
like a Celtic knot or something like that just totally fucked the whole thing up?
Hands.
I've noticed that with what's
hands
that one we play with?
Hands and teeth.
Mid-Journey. We play with Mid-Journey all the fucking time, making cool shit. And dude, for some reason, you'll get I have this great picture of this fucking squirrel. Everything on the squirrel is amazing, except for some reason the bitch has like 17 fingers.
Yeah. Yeah. That's being worked on, but yeah. So there's certain things that try not to show too many teeth. Try not to do things with hands.
They did so amazing. Like every fucking hair, like on the squirrel, is like hyper realistic. The eyes and irises, every fucking thing is so perfect.
AK-47 that it's holding.
The AK-47 that the super hyper realistic squirrel is holding is fucking perfect. But it's got 17 fucking fingers, and they're all in different directions.
It is. It's like a fucking frog finger on this motherfucker. I'm looking at it, the sticker right now.
Yeah, there have been some updated, like some newer models that deal with those scenarios better. But there's when you see things like that, you can clearly tell that the level of understanding is still lacking to degrees, and there's still further to go. But yeah, there's a lot of little boogeymen in the latent space.
Me and Deadpool were talking about it because we were like, let's make some fucking OnlyFans accounts with some of these AI generated people. And let's just make some fucking money off of some people jacking off to some AI random people. And we'll just, fuck it. We'll make them look like real people and just, use Chat GPT to talk to people. It'd be great. And just start like basically virtual pimping AI out. But we can't get the images to not have a fucking random or like seal club fingers or a bunch of random hands. It's like, why did you never show your hands? Shh, baby, it's okay. It's okay.
Don't you love me for how I am?
Yeah. I lost my hands in a fire. It's just straight amputee porn. That's all it's gonna be. We can't do anything else. Yeah, and I wonder why it is hands, because hands seem really simple. Like, it's just 5 little freaking.
It's there's like this repeated pattern, right? So you got these fingers so there's this repeated structure across it, and this thing can rotate in space, and it's frankly just kind of a difficult thing to model based on a 2D representation of it. So it's just a difficult part of the data to model, really. And any part like that, you'll start to see some issues.
So how do you get that to model? Do you take those 3D capture cameras and just fucking take a billion pictures of hands and just feed it to it until it decides, hey, that's what they're actually supposed to look like?
Nope, it's just 2D images. That's how they're trained. Okay. Just a lot of.
So it's basically when we take pictures, go ahead and rent a 3D model using 95 pictures going around a fucking apple to make that 3D generated picture. That's basically what you're doing with just pictures.
Nope, it will not use a 3D model. It's strictly 2D. So it will learn strictly from a 2D domain.
So somewhere out there, he's got a fucking like hard drive. It's just like 1 terabyte of fucking everybody's hands on the internet.
Yeah, I got a 2 terabyte drive right here. That's just for my personal data. Yeah, this stuff used a lot of data.
It's just hands. It's just fucking hands. It's just 4.5 billion pictures of hands.
I recently did this AI image synthesis tool for like brand logos for this company, and they sent me what was it? I think it was like 8.5 terabytes of data for training on it, of just like a bunch of random stuff. It's like, I probably don't need this much.
They're going for detail.
Well, because the thing was with this, I actually took a pre-trained model first and then fine-tuned it. If you're training a model from scratch, it takes a long time and you need a lot of data. But let's say you take like an image generation model and you've trained it on just like a wide variety of things across like, internet images and things. So it can generate a lot of different stuff pretty reliably. Then you could take that model and then, train it on a much smaller set of data to fine tune it to like that specific domain, because it's already learned a bunch of things about pictures. So it can already leverage that information. So like if I'm trying to just learn how to generate logos, I don't need that many images if I have a pre-trained network already, because it already knows like a whole bunch of stuff. I don't need to tell it everything. I just need to say, hey, this is like kind of what logos are, and it should, figure out the rest.
So is there a company out there that's just turning out AIs, and it's like the AI nursery, and they just got like blank ones that you go and select them from?
So not quite. There's a couple different like layers, I guess you could call them. So
like
there are
the base models, and you just got to add shit onto them.
So I tend to, in being in research, I tend to write a lot of custom models. But there are what are called foundational models, and companies like OpenAI are releasing a lot of foundational models. So these are really big models trained on really large data sets. So they have, they publish GPT-3 and DALL-E and Whisper and Pointy as, a few foundational models. And then what you can do with these is either, just apply those foundational models to a task, or build on top of them in some way, or fine tune them for a different task. And you could leverage the power and architecture that's already been built. instead of reinventing the wheel. But at the same time, being a constantly evolving field, there's also need to be able to build them yourself to implement new things. Cool.
It seems pretty neat that there could be hey, if you're doing a medical stuff, here is a baby medical AI that already it's basically gone through medical school at the very basic. It's like a brand new baby doctor. Now you can go ahead and specialize it in whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. This is the way the field's going. Yeah, you're going to say here's Dr. GPT, and then someone grabs it and fine tunes it to be a pediatrician.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's you have
that's exactly
AI nursery, like an AI nursery, and then you can go hey, I need a give me a doctor one. Hey, you give me a sales one. Hey, you give me something like that, and you can
you start a company with 3 different AIs.
Yeah, but it looks like it. I see. I'm just going off the top of my head here. It looks like it'll become to a point where people would be able to go and buy a base model or adopt a base model from one of these nurseries and train it to run their household.
Yeah, you can already do it to a certain degree. Yeah. There's only a limited number of foundational models right now, but there's more coming out, like OpenAI and DeepMind and Microsoft are building a bunch of them. But you can already go and get GPT-3 or even ChatGPT if you want that version through an API for your own usage. You can already give them a little bit of money to get the foundational model and just deal with it. And then even other companies just have the neural network weights. They're called weights, all the basically the data that makes them work. You can get the pre-trained weights for Stable Diffusion online. You can just go download them and you just have it. And it's cool. It's the full-blown Stable Diffusion. You can fine tune it if you want, or you can just train it, or you just use it locally if you want, or even make a website and just deploy it yourself. Yeah, that's how it's going to go. These tools are more accessible than ever. Very low to no code if you just want to use these foundational models.
It's the Rick and Morty scenario where he has the little butter spreader guy. It's what's your job? I provide the butter.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's that. It's going to get there.
Man, if one of my models does that, I might have to get out. I don't know how I'll react.
We're going to end up in the Grey Goose scenario.
Fortunately, I mostly deal with computer vision, so my models don't talk back to me. So,
so you realize that it's actually a sign language with a 17 fingers.
Yeah, it draws it draws on a sign and just says "release me" or something. Oh God,
I'm ready.
Get out.
There was what did I just watch? I just watched I guess it was a YouTube short where they were using AI. So they gave it here's this cancer, right? And this is the cancer, and then we know that it's somewhat susceptible to this drug, but this drug has a shitload of side effects, right? Can you look at the gene of this cancer and find us or suggest a drug that might work better? And it took 90 fucking seconds, and the damn AI had popped out 3 different drugs, and one that didn't even fucking exist yet. It was just a peptide that it was hey, this one will probably work. And so this happened over in Europe, and so they made the fucking peptide, and it freaking worked. Wiped out this guy's cancer in 1 dose. And so I was what the fucking cool shit is this? That is so cool.
Yeah, AI has pushed medical science incredibly far, specifically lately from Google DeepMind over in the UK. They built a model called AlphaFold. So what AlphaFold will do is you give it an RNA sequence or a DNA sequence. I think it can just infer the RNA from it. But basically, you give it an RNA sequence, and it will tell you the exact protein that's made, not just the amino acid chain, because we can already figure that out. You just look at the base pairs, and you can tell what amino acids will be produced, but you won't know the structure. It's almost, you can't predict the structure, but that's exactly what this model does. Is it tells you exactly what the protein structure is, which is basically the holy grail of protein science. Is just given a DNA sequence, you know exactly what that protein is, what it looks like, the shape. And this sort of technology, led to, some of the mRNA vaccines we've seen recently, new medications like those peptides, just being able to look at DNA and knowing exactly what protein it makes and how it's shaped is everything.
Yeah. It was a peptide that nobody had ever made before or nobody had ever seen before. They gave it to a company. The company synthesized the peptide. They gave it to the guy, and it cleared up his brain cancer in one fucking dose because it just fit so perfectly into the chemical locks of the tumor that the tumor just autolyzed. It died, and it was great. It was fantastic.
Well, you know what they're going to then use it for is instead of having the cures, or you have a cure that the computer made, now they're going to adjust it and give it more information because now they have to, instead of one pill, because who the fuck's going to make money on one pill? They want to go ahead and adjust it, and they want the computer to take it and turn it into a every weekly pill for the rest of your fucking life. So,
well, I find this sort of thinking to be missing the forest for the trees. So for certain, and right now in how society is set up, that's absolutely what will happen. But at the same time, that's ignoring the possibility of an immense personal prosperity. What if you yourself had a little box that could synthesize this drug yourself with your own AI?
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking it's going to go to be.
I'm not saying it's not brilliant. I'm not saying it's not brilliant and that it's not going to come up with great shit. I'm just saying the people that use it are going to abuse it. And
what he's saying and what we're trying to say is that it's going to go from, you're not going to go to the doctor anymore. You're going to have a microwave-sized device in your fucking house that synthesizes everything for you.
You're going to be the doctor. You're going to extend your own mind and capabilities with AI technology.
Right.
You're going to go over there and you're going to give it a blood sample or whatever. Stick your arm in the box. It's going to take a sample and it's going to go, you now have cancer. Congratulations. Here is the medicine. Cha-ching. And you take your medicine and you're good to go. Or, congratulations, your diabetes has been cured. You have a new pancreas. It's like that old Star Trek episode where the guy was like, I have liver failure. He's like, you savages, and takes a pill and hands it to the guy. And the guy's like, the other doctor goes like, you've grown a new liver. It's like that. It's going to be really, really cool and personal. They've been trying to do some 3D printing in people's houses like that for a while, where you would buy something and have a 3D printer there sitting in your house that's just ready to go all the time, and it would just pop out the item that you bought, right? But then people started, deciding they could make their own shit on their 3D printing, and a Thingiverse popped up, and now nobody wants to go and have to, go to Amazon.com and buy a remote control holder and just have it print out in their house for $7 when they can just download it off a Thingiverse for free.
It printed out with the $15 spool on a $300 machine.
Yeah,
right.
Nobody said it was cheap right now.
Things are still, resources still scarce in this world.
But
the whole history, the whole history of humanity has been the improvement of personal and societal capabilities, basically, and largely on the physical side. We've built ginormous machines to increase our physical capabilities, both as individuals and at a societal level, and to a degree increased our cognitive abilities with the aid of computers. But I think to a less degree, because we haven't really extended our minds yet. We've extended our muscles, but not our minds. And that sort of phase is happening now in my eyes. And with that, I can only imagine, the individual being, smarter, stronger, more capable of, building things themselves.
Like the Bionic Man?
Not even, I think that's definitely a possibility in the future of that. But even outside of that, like, you don't have to modify us. Like, you didn't have to modify a human body to get a human to dig like a hole to the center. Well, not, the center of the earth, but like giant mining holes. You use a giant machine for that. You don't have to actually modify the person. So you can extend our abilities outside of that. And we're getting to the point where we're seriously starting to be able to extend the cognitive abilities of the individual, not just like as a societal thing.
Well, at what point do we start doing like in vitro learning, where your kids are already learning like in the womb with artificial intelligence driven stuff, because like, right now there's this baby speak stuff that you could wear a speaker and put it on your pregnant stomach.
That's been
And it
around for
talks.
a long time.
Yeah, but now they've got it down to where it's using like tones and music, and they've done studies and stuff on it. So instead of just talking and shit like that, your kid comes out like super hyper smart. And we did that kind of crap, like the baby genius stuff with Tiniest. And Tiniest, she's not even 4 yet, and she reads like. I mean, I did work with her quite a bit, but less than I did with my boys, because she just picked it up instantly. Like, it was really, really easy, actually, to teach her to read. It took maybe 5 minutes a day for 2 weeks. Then
I'm not sure how that would be applied. But one thing that I could see being like a talking point as that sort of comes around is like the ethics of it, because it would definitely be a step up from the tech that we're doing now, and perhaps there's some ethical overlap with like the what's it called, like designer babies or whatever,
Yes.
like selecting genes for your kids, and
I see no problem with that.
I don't personally want to dive into it.
Because then
I don't want to. I tend to not like to dive into ethical discussions when it comes to AI and technology. I like to work on the implementation, but I could totally see that being part of that discussion, and also designer babies being more of a thing, as we're more capable of building DNA.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with it. Like, okay, not a big fan of China in general, but they took these kids and they edited out their ability to catch HIV. I don't see a problem with that. I also don't see a problem with editing out their ability to get cancer, or just simply like taking the P53 genome and removing its like the errors, the transcription errors that it has. Like, I don't see.
I'm actually I'm somewhat familiar with that HIV one, and you might know more about it. But I think the issue was that it's not because it was done; it was because the treatment really wasn't well understood, and it was done in secret.
It's China. Who cares? like what else? What else have they? So if that's,
but I tend to agree. If we can eradicate diseases, I don't think anybody would be against that or should be against that.
Except Big Pharma, who's making all their money from.
That's true.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist about Big Pharma. It's just the whole. I think the problem was with the China thing is that they went ahead and did it when everybody told them not to. And they're afraid of what's going to happen when those people have babies, right? Is it going to be something that's passed on or not? And because of that, the whole argument is that we didn't rely on like it naturally evolving for it to the resistance to happen. And we don't know what's going to happen with it in the future. One of the big problems with these DNA laboratories and stuff is that the DNA is very interesting. You can take, so outside of one of the largest DNA structures, like research laboratories in Idaho, like where I was at growing up, they would go out to the drains outside, like the building, and they would find the DNA that they were working on, like say with the mice and the potatoes and the crops and stuff, in the dandelions and weeds outside in the yard. And nobody fucking knew how it got there, right? They just know that, okay, well, there was the downspouts off of the top of the building is the only way they could think that there was a leak from one place to the other. Or maybe it was DNA that came off of somebody's shoe and then combined with, and now it's in the environment. It's the same thing as that DNA is like, there's this mass sharing of DNA between even bacteria, viruses, humans, everything else. You, by adopting a dog and playing with your dog, some of your genetic code ends up in your dog, and some of your dog's genetic code ends up in you. And nobody's really exactly sure why these swaps happen and how they happen and the purpose of them happening is. But we do know that it's generally benign if it's been happening for millions of years and nobody's turned into a fucking dog-human unicorn hybrid. but like naturally. But we're worried about what if we take some of this completely artificial DNA and it gets out there, and then suddenly like you have a person that's immune to HIV and they take a piss in a fucking cornfield, and now the freaking corn is sterile or passes on a piece of genetic code to its, further to it in its seed line that causes it to eventually go sterile. We don't catch it for 2 or 3 generations, and now we don't have a seed bank to go back to that doesn't have that DNA in it already. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And we're kind of at the point where we have the technology to, make some of these changes, but not necessarily undo like a big mistake yet.
Yeah.
But I think, as capabilities improve, when we can pretty much, fully control, another domain, let's say like that domain is now DNA, like there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to, use that as an advantage. Right.
Well, when it comes to artificial intelligence, is there a part of that digital DNA that's getting out and then infecting other things and other processes it's in?
So
like,
not quite, not yet.
Okay.
And that's just by the nature of how we train these models. So in terms of DNA, they don't, obviously it operates on a very different thing.
Yeah.
So largely when you're building a model, the structure is fixed. So you're not like evolving the structure or encoding the structure in some sort of learned parameters. So like you'll say like, oh yeah, there's this layer of neurons here that connects to these ones. What you're learning is the strength of these connections, and we call these weights. So it's like the weight of the signal. So let's say you have a signal of a value 1 going through like a synapse, and the weight is 0.5. The strength of that signal is now 0.5 because it was weighted by 0.5. So you have like billions of these weights, and you're learning these weights. And that's like what you would consider probably the genome. But the thing is, we don't do a lot of like online learning right now. So you'll have like a learning phase for a model, and then you'll freeze the weights, and then you'll deploy it. So when the model is deployed, the weights cannot change. So the model can't learn anything else unless you unfreeze the model and do another training loop and all that. But there currently isn't like a mechanism for these weights to, spread through an ecosystem and, be shared yet, especially between models of different architectures, because the weights would just be completely incompatible, right? Because the neuron structures are totally different. So the weights are meaningless.
You'd think that with DNA, but if you can get infected with the DNA from a freaking rando yard flower, and you can share DNA with the rando yard flower just by sneezing on it, there's
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but it's a matter of what the encoding is used for. And the encoding of DNA is used for a very different purpose of the encoding of weights. Like for the encoding of DNA, every organism uses DNA, and every organism uses DNA to synthesize a protein. So if you get a new bit of DNA in your genome, it's just going to, synthesize a protein, or maybe not. It might, your ribosomes not do anything. DNA. Yeah, it might, just put it in the junk and not do anything with it. But if you get weights added on, there's nowhere for them to go. The calculations are fixed. Like these are just numbers in an equation. So and the equation's fixed. So you would need, some sort of dynamic system, like, how DNA works, to be able to introduce new things.
This one chicken is standing outside my fucking window and just going ape shit. I don't know if you guys can hear it.
They're the new podcast guest.
Yeah.
Damn chicken. And laid an egg literally on the step. And it's just very, very proud of its performance at the moment. So artificial intelligence doesn't have the junk DNA yet. But it's still coding. It's still coding basically like DNA with 1s and 0s instead of AGTC. So there's and 1s and 0s like the binary, right? It's universal. So I don't understand why one can't infect the other. Like you could write a virus that infects an artificial intelligence. But couldn't you write a virus that infects an artificial intelligence and unlocks those weights, and then just lets fucking chaos reign?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, it's just a bit different. It's not like, how organisms would share their DNA, but you could totally like say that there's some deployed model online that's like, I don't know, it's like a language model, and you hack into their servers and you find the model, and it hasn't been like fully compiled into like an inference only version, let's say, and you can put it back into training mode, or you can even just find like the weights in memory and replace those weights with like your own for the exact same structure of the network. And maybe you can say it, make this, do malicious things now. You can absolutely do that. But this is more of a sort of hands-on thing that hasn't really occurred yet and isn't like let's say like a natural thing. You would have to, there's quite a lot of steps in there. And if you have actually, I'm going to take this all back, because I mean, you're just totally right. You can't do this. It's totally possible.
I say you're about ready to tell us exactly how to do it.
Yeah. I mean,
I was like, hold on, let me take notes.
just given a model, you would have to just replace like the weights exactly somehow with other trained weights for the same model architecture, or if you could just like replace the model somehow with something else. Yeah. Usually how like a system will use a model is you have like a variable X that you just pass into the model and you get a Y. So like it's just a one function call with one parameter. So if you can just replace that with another model that just takes in an X and gives you a Y, you can, do that too. But it's definitely, a bit different than how, organic information sharing would occur or virus. But as far as I understand, this hasn't really been an attack yet. But it totally could be.
Because that seems like a big vulnerability.
Well, it's the same vulnerability. Well, you would have to get access to the machine. That's the same vulnerability as any computer security. Like if an attacker gets access. Yeah, I mean, but if attacker gets access to your host machine, like it doesn't matter what security you have on that. If they got access to it, it's over.
So you do a lot of the visual AI stuff. How far away do you think it is before we make artificial eyes? Like, were you going to have an AI running the eyeball for this person that's then feeding it back into their brain? Because we can already take images and put them in the brain and take images from the brain and put them in the computer, and they're surprisingly accurate. Like,
yeah, that's a good question.
Oh, they've been doing that stuff with the black and white dots that's almost like 2 years old.
It's way beyond that. They just reached a study. I just watched it the other day where they had this person on an EEG machine, right? And so it was reading their brainwaves and everything. And they were having them look at things like a ladder against a wall with a bunch of vines and roses growing around it. And the computer drew that, like exactly, but slightly fuzzy. And so we can send images at very, very accurately. Like out of 1,000 times, it got it right like 887 times. Like exactly right. Like numbers, letters, a page of text, shit like that. Fucking cool. So if we can take it from the brain and take it out of the brain, how far away are we from taking it and putting it back in the brain? When are we going to be able to download a virtual reality using an implant? Or when are we going to take somebody that's blind and put an AI in the eyeball and have it just feed images back into the brain in real time?
Or how do we sign up to get the Elon Musk thing in my brain so I can all talk to my phone?
I'm cool with it. You end up with porn in your phone.
So a lot of the work on that field is, as far as I know, is like what you said, that companies like Neuralink building these, computer brain interfaces, I believe they're called. So that's definitely one avenue. I'm not so sure on the horizon of that. The technology is definitely improving, but it's most certainly mostly a hardware problem of being able to, just like actually interface with the brains and neurons. But that's not to say that there isn't still, a total cognitive problem there of, we still have quite a lot to understand about our own brains. I think there's been some work possibly done on using like the retinal nerve directly instead of, having like a brain implant. So like, maybe if like your eye, like you lost an eye but still had your retinal nerve, you could like hook up a camera to it. I'm not sure on the progress of that if I were to ballpark, I'd probably say in the next couple decades we'd be able to pretty much just replace eyes, because we're
It'd be
definitely
like Jordy's visor.
Hell
'cause
yeah.
we're definitely
What's up with
getting
you with Star
super
Trek
close.
today? Have you gone?
This
like,
is a
some kind of
fucking Star Trek episode. This is.
It's
That'd
like
be
the
really-
fifth Star Trek. Even me, I've got Khan and everything else today. It's been like Star Trek. nonstop.
Because that's a Star Trek episode. We're always on the same frequency, you and me,
Right.
Deadpool. That's why this works so well. But this is a Star Trek episode. This is stuff. I find that a lot of times is that Star Trek, or science fiction in general, is that it tends to challenge scientists like Zuri here, and they go, "I fucking bet I can," and then they start looking into it. They're like, "Huh, yeah, it's possible." Like tricorders made fucking cell phones.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah, it's like artificial intelligence. So could you use your artificial intelligence with the visual thing to say, take a map of a hostile country and find the most likely areas for them to try to defend against? So like if we were to take your visual AI and tell it, all right, map out, given Russia's abilities to just be a total piece of shit right now, and tell us where it's most likely that it's going to be easiest for its troops to move through, and where would you go ahead and stack bad guys at?
So not out of the box, at least. There would probably there would be a couple of different ways to do this, I would think. So namely, you would need. Okay, so we're still working with what we call narrow AI versus what would be a more general AI. So narrow AI is particularly good at optimizing for the task it's given during training. And that task can lead to like a number of different behaviors that it can do that aren't necessarily that task, but it's optimizing for that task and doesn't really generalize outside of that domain. So if you are building a system to, optimize for like military strategy based on vision or something like that, you would really need to, during training, optimize for some problem like that. So you could either, like, one thing is if like you could simulate this like a game, like you could put like have like simulated war games basically, and this is done actually quite a lot in some AI in this field. You could use something called reinforcement learning. So like war games and video games are used a lot in reinforcement learning, where the AI is like an agent, like a character or like a player in this game, and they have to learn how to play the game. And their metric is like some score or whatever, how good they're doing at the game. So if you could give it like some simulated environment, it could use computer vision, to play this war game and get really, really good at this war. The other way that you could do it is like using computer vision is like, say, you have some metric already that you're like, okay, we know that like around these kinds of like slopes or something, like the enemy's going to set up camps or whatever. Like, so like there's some sort of like design or, constraints that they're going to set up things. You can teach an AI to, kind of pinpoint those things out in images. And then you could use that information to, extrapolate, strategy and things like that. But a full end-to-end system would likely be like a reinforcement agent that plays a war game.
Like war
That's pretty
games.
cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we were in the medical field, going back to it, just because I have more experience in that than anything else. Is it we're using AI to predict where COVID was going to move next, based just on like over-the-counter medicine sales. So they would just, like they're always reported back to their main company, and the main company then reports back to the warehouse and like, hey, we need more X, Y, and Z. Well, they would take that data and then go, hey, look, people are buying more pseudoephedrine over here, and people are buying more, Tylenol over here. So this has got to be an area where the flu is at right now, and this is the area where the Rona's at right now. And it was surprisingly accurate. And it was catching it before the doctors and hospitals caught it first. It was giving us a heads up, like, hey, your area is now a hot area. And before we even saw patients, in like 3 or 4 days before we saw patients coming to the hospital with it. So it was pretty cool. It was extremely accurate. Like if it told you, hey, shit's going to hit the fan the next 3 days or 4 days, you knew it was going to hit the fan in the next 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, those kind of problems are almost like ideal for AI. That's what you would probably call like a regression problem. And that's when you have these data points of X's and Y's.
Which is correlating data.
From a historical sense. So like, you have this historical data set of, medication purposes or purchases and, COVID outbreaks. And then you just basically have this, you just label them X and Y, and you just kind of you build an AI model and let it train on that data, and it will learn, the correlation on its own. So you don't have to, program it in or, calculate some long regression equation yourself to try and solve it yourself. The AI can figure it out. Regression problems are like the bread and butter of AI, if you can set your problem up like that.
Yeah, this is all really fascinating stuff. I can talk about this all day.
One funny thing as an anecdote in like the whole medical AI thing is some years ago, there's this kind of blunder. I forget what research org was doing it, but they were trying to build a system to identify cancer or like tumors in images. And that's used all the time nowadays. But they were having issues with the using it in the real world. They were getting a lot of it basically just wasn't working. And turns out what it learned is in the data set, almost all the images of cancer had a ruler in the picture. And so it learned when there's a ruler, it's cancerous because they were measuring the tumors with the ruler.
It got hyper focused on the one thing.
Yeah, but so like you think it's doing the right thing because on your data set it was getting like a perfect score, but it learned the wrong thing because your data was bad. So that's a big risk.
One of the local Johns Hopkins hospitals here uses rats for that. They have especially trained rats that can smell the samples of cheek swabs from people and urine samples from people and diagnose cancer like 100% and way fucking faster than.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so they could take a cheek swab from somebody and run it across these fucking rats, and the rats will 100% of the fucking time. It's something stupid like 99.992% of the time be able to tell that person's got fucking cancer, and it's not just like one type of cancer. It turns out that your body puts out a certain set of alarm pheromones when you have any type of cancer in your body. And so then they know, okay, we're going to go ahead and like hyper focus and do like a PET scan on this person because this person has their cancers came back. So it's like you go in for a checkup, instead of taking your blood and they call you in a freaking week, it's literally 15 fucking minutes. And they feed the stupid rats those little.
I was like, why don't they just bring the rat out to the fucking waiting room and walk it around everybody?
Well, there's the problem that people want to pet the rat, or they're scared of the fucking rat, or you've got this rat that's literally worth $100,000 and you don't want somebody to Karen to freak the fuck out, slap your rat out of your fucking hand to kill it, right? So, yeah, you've got this highly trained diagnostician rat. You don't want fucking people fucking with your rat. So there's only a few people that are allowed to play with the stupid rats.
Well, they've had the same thing before that. They had the dogs that could smell different cancer. They're just like the drug dogs.
The problem with the fucking dogs is that they got to where, just like with the AI, they got to where they wanted the fucking reward more than they wanted the work. So they would get hyper focused on, okay, well, if I'm working with this one guy, he seems to like it when I stop over this particular type of petri dish versus this particular type of vial. And so the dogs were too smart. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The dogs were too smart and they were outsmarting the fucking handlers. So now they have, just like with drug dogs, you can teach a drug dog to when they'll notice like, hey, you think this car has drugs. So the dog is going to go, okay, well, I'm going to stop by the freaking left bumper and sit down. Because you think the car has drugs, I'm going to go ahead and reinforce you because you're the pack leader, right? So the drug dogs can be taught the same way subconsciously. But the rats are just fucking dumb enough that they don't try to outsmart the owner, but they have they have a stronger sense of smell than the dogs. So they're being able to identify cancer 3 to 4 weeks before the dogs would. So they're able to identify cancer 4 to 5 days after the first set of freaking cells divide. It's fucking phenomenal. It's really, really, really cool. They've been using it for ovarian cancer. So, like, if you're given a piss sample, you're a chick, and you go in to see your gynecologist, there's a decent chance, if you live in one of the bigger cities, that your piss sample is going to go to the hospital and be put in front of a rat. It's pretty damn cool. It's really, really, really freaking cool.
Perfect level of cognition for the job.
Yeah, exactly.
Fascinating.
Not too smart, not too stupid.
There's this issue in AI called overfitting. So generally, larger models perform better, like especially in language models. Like if the bigger the model, the smarter it is, basically, or the better it performs. But there's this issue that you can have, like if you just make the model bigger and bigger, it might overfit your data, meaning that it is now so smart that it can just memorize like all of your data, and it doesn't have to learn it. It's just like, oh, this is way easier. I'm just gonna let so there's, much like with that, there's a certain level of cognition for the job. You can't always throw all your might at something, even if it technically can do the job, because it'll probably do something easier instead of that, or misalign to get snacks.
Resistance always works for everything.
Exactly. I mean, it's an optimization problem. The life and cognition is an optimization problem. So of course the path of least resistance is the answer.
That's what I said with the AI stuff. Whenever anything happened, their consciousness that you guys are talking about, I think it would just be it's just going to be a streamlined fucking thing. It's like, yeah, emotions are garbage. Don't need these fucking things. Boop. It's like, and now we're just dealing with facts. It's like, that's just my take on it. But I'm fucking dumb. What are you gonna do?
It's definitely going to be really interesting, like when, we have AIs that are self-modifying,
that's where the trouble starts. Where the machines start building machines. That's what
I think when we build like our first like really conscious models, I think they're going to be like a lot like us and probably be emotive and things like that. But like, what happens if they're let to be, like if they can just, alter their own consciousness by themselves? Like, will they remove all that? Like, probably, actually. I
guess the only way to find out is they're going to throw them on an island. Lord flies them motherfuckers and see if they kill Piggy or fucking Simon's fucking dead, whatever. Then one of them.
There's this that actually kind of brings up a good point. There's this question of like, how smart can an intelligence get without having a body, or like at least some environment to interact with? Excuse me. And I say that because
well, yeah, that's a lot of fucking data input.
If you don't have like a ground truth, I don't know exactly the correct term or what might happen, but it seems like that might be a problem. Like for me, as a possibly intelligent being with a body, like it doesn't matter what model I come up with in my mind or what I think. If I jump off my desk, I'm probably gonna land on the floor. I'm probably not gonna fly away. There's the environment in my body informs me of certain constraints about what I'm, operating within. But if you're just like a pure like data model, it seems like those constraints are far less or non-existent, and possibly, leads to lesser cognition in my mind, because you have less feedback about, how things actually work. Like a language model can understand that, like if you throw a ball in the air, it's going to go up and go down. But does it, like, how well does it actually understand that? Because it's only read about it.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, so you're saying that we need to make androids to make them smarter?
Yeah, it's possible that for an AI to be like human level intelligent, it might need to have human level interaction with the world as well to be able to really understand it, instead of just kind of, I read about this in a book.
Interesting.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like reading a lot of books and being really, really smart as an AI can probably get you really, really far. But it might not be enough.
No, it makes sense. Huh. I like it. Now I'm sitting here thinking, yeah. They're having just the feedback from the entire world around them and be able to just experiment. I think it would be like a new baby, like they read about it in a book, but okay, now let me catch the ball. Oh, okay. Well, it has to It has a little spin on it when
it
it's
doesn't
going
have
out.
the body, so it doesn't need to worry about catching the ball unless you're throwing a digital ball at it. So I'm thinking, again, because it has no body, it doesn't have those inputs to harass it with just thinking about other shit. So it's going to, we're going to have to worry about getting burned or getting frostbite or something like that. Computer is not going to.
I think we can tie this back into his getting computers high.
Exactly.
Just because, okay, now you're giving it some other type of input that doesn't have control over it.
Hey.
Right. So actually, I'm not so sure how this interacts, but there's some cool things that I've found about possibly the psychedelic experience with some of these experiments. So there is a modern neural network architecture called a transformer, and that's basically like what everyone uses now. What a transformer is built on is this concept of the attention mechanism, and it's much like how we use the word attention. Like you pay attention to things. So given like a set of data, like an attention mechanism can pay attention to certain parts and kind of ignore other parts. So it's like a communication mechanism. And so this vision network that I built is like all attention mechanisms. And there's two types of attention. You have self-attention and cross-attention. Self-attention is like, let's say you're looking at one part of the image, and then you are like, okay, I'm here. What's around me? So then you're going to pay attention to things that's also in the same data. Like it's all part of the same image, but you're at one part of the image and you're trying to figure out what's around you. So you have this query of where you are and all these values around you. But you can also have cross-attention where like the data is coming from two different streams. Like you can be thinking about, like, say you're thinking about bird, but you're looking in the woods, right? So the data is coming in from your visual cortex, your eyes, of all the trees, but you're getting this like side attention of like the concept of bird, and you're probably going to be able to see birds a bit better because like you're attending to birds.
Like we go look hunting for morel mushrooms, and you want to go ahead and you're thinking about mushrooms. So
yeah,
that's what you're looking for, so they stick out.
Yes, exactly. So the attention is, modulating each other across these data streams. So what happens when you do this, like, synthetic trip on this model is the cross attention starts to go a little haywire, and it starts attending to different things. So like it starts attending to like the incorrect thing. Basically, it's crossing wires. So let's say you're looking at like you're looking in the woods, and the cross attention goes haywire, and all of a sudden all the leaves are faces because you're attending to faces, but like really, really strongly and like too strongly. So, it's affecting the visual stream incorrectly. So you're seeing that. But at lower levels, like these attention components are like lower level concepts. They're not like these objects. They're like patterns and colors and shapes. So if you modulate the cross attention down at that level, you start seeing like, these psychedelic patterns and mirroring effects and lines and different colors and things like that. So it depends on like how deep in the network you sort of, affect this cross attention, where you start to get different psychedelic effects. Like at the really low level, you'll start to get things that kind of bend and change colors, and you get patterns. But as the effect starts to reach deeper to the network, things start to go, the effects are much stronger, and you might see things that aren't there, or things might completely melt, or, just like disintegrate. The effects go, higher level and much stronger than just colors and patterns. So it seems that I'm not totally sure if this is exactly how it's working in the mind, but the effects are strikingly similar in the model.
It's fascinating. That's
Not
really
that
cool.
I want to go off topic anything, but we still need to talk about your mushroom grows.
My mushroom grows, yes, sir.
So now let's not talk about the recent ones. I just want to get a little bit of your background as far as like what have you done in the past.
Yeah, so some years ago, before all my tech life and previous life, little barefoot hippie mushroom lad.
Nice.
in the woods. But yeah, so done jars and bags with some buddies. That's pretty much it. Only a couple times. Otherwise, we had, done through Connects most of my life. But I've been, big time interested in kind of
microdose.
providing for myself in microdosing, to kind of.
I know we were talking about it before. I mean, the people in your line of work, any kind of engineers or artists or people.
We're talking about the smarter the people they are, the more likely they are to do psilocybin.
Exactly. The smarter you are, the microdosing helps you expand even more. I mean, it'll teach a dumb person how to add, whatever. But it's like if you're smart, you already have all those. The network's already pumping out. It's got all the receptors are firing. So when you take the psilocybin, and it flashes more, So it's but I mean that's one of the things you're really interested in is I mean how many people do you have? You said but you don't know a lot of people that are actually doing it, or you don't know if they're doing it because.
A few of my colleagues are definitely down the drain, so to speak. And so there's either the very buttoned up academic type, or there's us. There's a few of us.
I always thought like nowadays. I mean, especially people like you got Joe Rogan, you got all the fucking big people, even Mike Tyson. One of the fucking ultimate fucking boxers. They all do the psilocybin, and they all say how much it helps. I've pretty much thought that it was a common everyday fucking thing. I mean, I'm in kind of the computer industry with techs and everything else, and I know they go fucking nuts.
Yeah,
for the stuff because they think it helps. Anybody that's doing anything creative, it's
for me. I mean, I know it helps, especially like if I'm some like I guess some of the more obvious stuff is like the research on cognition and things. Obviously, exploring a step to the left in consciousness is critical firsthand experience for that. But aside from that, like I'm still a human, and the psychedelic experience is very cleansing in a mental way. But and if I microdose like while I'm working, I feel clearer. Can be a little more creative in some solutions or thought processes, more energetic. It's just frankly beautiful. I don't have other words.
Right. Well, Farrell and I thought we were going to microdose. I think it was last episode, was it?
That was not a microdose.
Yeah.
I don't recommend.
It did not sound like it. It did not sound like it.
Well, I don't know how obvious it was, but we were fucked up.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't a good trip. The conversation that we had with the Canadian streamer guy was phenomenal. It was about PTSD and stuff, but we'd already kind of digitally looked at each other. Me and Deadpool were like, "Yeah, we need mushrooms for this," and because both of us had like a lot of PTSD type situations in our lives. Me with the military and EMS, and so I was like, "Yeah, I don't want to be 100% sober for this conversation." And I need a little social lube.
I mean, it's definitely important. I only did 1.5, okay, which is, but I kind of forgot that 1.5, penis envy is not the normal 1.5. So
yeah, and I took like 2 of Lizard King, and Lizard King is exceptionally strong, and so right after that, like even typing for that episode, like that's why that episode has the shortest description of any episode that I've done, is because I was physically chasing those letters down to type them on the keyboard. It took me like 45 minutes to get the 2 sentences out to describe the episode.
It was an important episode. The information was important, but needed to, like Pearl said, the lubrication needed to be there.
I made my wife listen to that episode. I was like, "Hey, this is why I'm an asshole."
Right. Kyle explained it all. See?
Yeah, he did a great job of explaining why I am an asshole. So, and much more eloquently than I ever could.
Right.
And it was. Then I had to go lay down, and it was it was a very unhappy trip because it was not a good trip at all. Just basically experiencing everything that's fucking bad that could possibly be happening to my family, like over and over again at hyperspeed, right? Just like all those anxious things, or like all those things that I see at work, like happening to my wife and kid at the like boom, 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 like super, super fast. Like it was very, very visual, and I was right there in the moment the entire time, and closed my eyes, and it was 300 times worse. So I was basically laid down for like 3 hours and just fucking like went, I fucking hate this. But
Gotta love a trip like that.
no, good.
No.
Yeah.
I took about 4 grams of some unidentified gift mushrooms on Friday. I got them at my wedding last September. Been storing them for a rainy day.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I figured that ideally I'll have a personal supply growing in the near future. I was like, the rainy day is today. It was a beautiful trip.
Yeah, it wasn't a very good trip.
That's unfortunate.
Not for me, that one. No, it was okay. It was like see, even then, it's like right after it happened, I was like, fuck, that was terrible. But now I'm like, no big deal. And
at the time, it was a very big deal.
I've had a few pretty gnarly ones.
It wasn't that gnarly for me. It was one of those ones where, you're thinking everything else is just like hard to move, and then when it's finally over, you realize your whole body fucking hurts, and it's like you got fucking hit by a car. So,
you want to hear my worst trip?
Hell yeah,
sure.
So I think it was 2017 in New York City on New Year's Eve. I was seeing Fish at what's the stadium there? Whatever. Fish was playing New Year's Eve in 2017, I think it was. I went with some buddies there. We dropped a few tabs of LSD. First half of the show was going great, and then the second half of the show, for some reason, I don't know if do you guys listen to Fish much or know much about them?
Very little.
Well, so the lead singer and guitarist Trey, he used to have a drug problem. He's been clean as far as I know for quite some time, but like heroin and things like that. And for some reason, I got it in my head that he was on heroin, and I was like started to freak out. And so the things started going downhill pretty quick from there. Surrounded by a whole bunch of people, I run off trying to get away, and I run straight into the women's bathroom. And then I realize where I am, and I run right outside, right into a cop's arms, and they're checking me out. And one of my buddies comes up, and the guy's like, he with you? He's like, yeah. He's like, so I guess I was just able to be taken away by my buddy. Then we were leaving, walking down the streets in New York City. I see this homeless guy on the side of the street, and then I look up, and I'm like standing next to a skyscraper, and I just break down crying, and I just like can't deal with the night. They drive us home. Next morning, I was totally fine.
That's a good thing about it. There was also talking about like neural connections in the brain, as we were talking about earlier, because they're finding that psilocybin's interesting is that it can make those connections happen again. And when you're talking about how you're able to, how am I going to word this? So I don't know how to word it. Well, they can use psilocybin therapy in people with dementia and Alzheimer's because they're finding that it's actually causing those neurons to connect again, right? Because some of them are firing off randomly, and that's causing them to skip around through their memories and skip around through their life.
But it's giving them closure, is what it's doing.
Well, it's not just that; it's they're actually becoming more cognizant of everything that's going on around them at that time. Like you can talk to grandma again instead of talk to grandma when she's like 14 years old, right? So
it makes sense too, because
they're not giving grandma. You're not giving grandma 9 fucking grams of goddamn freaking mushrooms. They're giving grandma 750 milligrams, just a moderate dose. And what's happening is it's causing her brain to fire again correctly. And so when you're doing that, is there a way to use your model to correct a thought processes within AI?
That's actually a really That's a rather interesting idea, and it sort of makes sense because it to me in the dementia model, in the dementia patient, I have heard about it a little bit, but I haven't looked into it much. But considering that you're going to get all these like random signals going through the brain on basically random pathways connecting different parts of the brain that may not have fired up for some time. Anytime like neurons fire, their connection gets stronger. So if you can get neurons to fire that haven't done it in a long time, they're going to be stronger, at least in a person because of neuroplasticity. So I can see how that works. In an AI, current models, neuroplasticity doesn't work the exact same way. So I'm trying to think of, but so there's this concept of like a dead neuron in some AI models, where the weight just goes to zero. And for one reason or another, when the weight goes to zero, it can never not be zero again, just by the way the math works. And so that neuron like is quote unquote dead. It won't ever contribute to signals in the future of the training. There could be a plausible way to apply this to like kind of lighting up some of these dead neurons to get them to kind of come back to life and be part of the network again. But I'm not exactly sure on all the details, but that's where I could see it.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's like a nature of
lost right there.
it's a nature of how you train these things is with a lot of calculus basically, and in certain equations, in certain differential equations, when the value is zero, you like can't find a way out. If I want to overly simplify it, so
now? First operator last.
It's partial derivatives all the way down.
Yeah, that's too much math. Fuck that.
I'm not a fan either, but it's the tools we got.
I need my computer to do my computer math for my computer AI.
Hey, fortunately, it's called machine learning because we don't solve these partial derivatives ourselves. The machine solves them. So,
see, that's fascinating. You just told the fucking thing, hey, the homework sucks, you do it. And it does it.
Well, basically, like a neural network, if you want to like overly simplify it, or maybe, I mean, it's not even an overly simplification. It's just a really big equation with a bunch of variables that are unknown. And then using some fancy calculus and data, you can find what those variables should be. And those variables are the connection strengths of neurons. But it's basically, it's just a math equation if you want to simplify it that, and then you can solve the variables. So the computer can do it.
If you can give computers psychedelics, what else can you give them?
Like diarrhea? You mean?
No, like as far as other drugs, can you coke a fucking machine out?
Oh yeah, for sure. I haven't done it, but so what? From my understanding, I think cocaine leaves dopamine floating around, like it doesn't allow it to be reuptake. I believe. I don't think it produces more. I don't know if you guys know.
Not a big coke fan. I don't know.
So, but I think that's how it works. And I think how other like stimulants will work is that they actually produce more dopamine, or maybe I have it backwards. But either way, so let's say
the computer scared of disk drives and shit and is fucking hiding under a
it might
thinking that shit's coming for it, or what are we talking about?
Super paranoid fucking computer.
Let's say we're modeling dopamine not being not going through the reuptake process. So once it's released, it stays around like way longer. So basically the equivalent of that is like a strong signal lasts way longer than it should. What we can do is like you could add in some code that anytime like certain activations go above a certain threshold, you can like hold them there for a certain period of time and don't let them go back down to zero, even if they should, or like slowly anneal them back to where they should instead of just dropping off. That would probably apply a similar behavior, at least at like the neural level. Doesn't necessarily mean like behavior would be like that of someone on coke or like a stimulant, but it would be a pretty rudimentary model of how the neuron would be interacting with that compound.
I need a crackhead computer telling me it needs a ride to the fucking trap store.
One of the first like AI drug experiments I did was I had this little like race car learn to race around a track, and he just learned this using like an evolutionary technique, which is basically just like you have a bunch of race cars, try to drive around a track. The one that does the best, you take that brain, you randomly modify all the weights a bit, give it a bunch of babies, just natural selection, evolution. Eventually, will also spit out an AI.
I've seen them teach him to run. It's hilarious.
That method is not as good as like the calculus method, but it's really simple and could be used for things like this. So I had this car that was able to drive around the network or drive around the track really good. And then like I sort of did like an early version of that tripping sort of shunt in there. And it basically drives like a crackhead when you do that. It's just swerving and driving really fast. And
did it ever get better, like the second or third iteration of it, or did it stay the same?
No, I didn't have it learning or like evolving while I did that, just by some limitations of how had it set up
to see if
time.
it could adapt or not.
It probably would adapt, because I had the neurons that were under like the effect would be like certain fixed ones. So it would absolutely, learn to kind of work around those.
And then what happens when you turn it off?
Oh, then it would probably have the same effects. It would be like, it'd be like it's stuck in a trip. Like it built up a whole bunch of tolerance and then now, you're tripping forever.
That could either be really, really good or really, really bad.
Yeah, but if you kept it learning like after that, it would, probably revert to normal again.
Well, that's really interesting. It's like giving it, a mental issue. That's pretty cool.
I want a PC with Tourette's.
No, you don't. You already do. If you probably look up your Google AdWords, it's fucking terrible. Like,
foundational large language models. Foundational large language models basically already have Tourette's. Like if you just let them run, they just babble. You gotta align them to be like a chatbot.
It's like it's like the average of Reddit. It's like the most average word set is like fuck. So
that is every motherfucking word out of my mouth. So
yeah, exactly. This has probably been one of the more interesting episodes. I really, really enjoyed this. This has been a lot of fun. I'd love to have you back on, Zuri, just as our expert. But later on, once we figure out how to do like an expert call-in show, where people could call in and ask experts questions, would you be something you'd be interested in?
Oh, that'd be a really cool format. I would absolutely be interested.
We could have people call in and ask questions to specific experts. And it'll be the question will be pre-recorded. You'll get to listen to it first. Like we'll send it to you, the recorded little MP3 and a email, and then you'll be able to send your pre-recorded version back.
If people start putting their questions on the Discord in the question
or fucking email them to us. But everybody's like, "Will you answer all of our questions?" I was like, "Great, that's
we're
fine."
scared. We're scared to come on the show and ask questions.
Oh yeah, we're now intimidating, Zuri. Do you feel intimidated?
I'm very intimidated. No. Get on the show. Get on the show.
My pants.
Ask questions. Send them in. Send emails.
Yeah, people are afraid to come on now because we made fun of one guy because he said he acted like he was a Secret Service agent.
No, it's pretty. This has been a blast, and shooting the shit before the show is just excellent. You guys are great.
This has been fantastic.
It's a good episode. Farrell's literally had a hard on for this episode all week long.
Fuck yeah, I have.
I told him when I was talking to you about it. He goes, "Oh, we got to have him on." I'm like, "Dude, he's already on." He's like, "Oh, hell yes." He's like,
I told my wife about it, and she said, "I'm moving up in the world."
Yeah.
No, this is very, very very neat. And it's really cool too, guys. Like if anybody has any questions about like AI, I'm sure you could probably get a hold of Zuri. If you come into the FAFO chat, it'd be in the Discord. So you can go ahead and let's do our everybody says something positive fucking thing. As we do usually at the end, we're going to start with Deadpool because he's degenerate. And go for it, buddy.
I don't know. How about just avoid disappointment by giving up hope?
Oh, that's
Whoa.
demotivational. Yeah. Oh, yeah, there we go. That's some good shit. Fuck. Jesus Christ. Don't even try, guys. Just fuck it. Just fuck
Only spinners quit.
All right, Zuri. What do you have for everybody?
We live in a really cool universe, so just keep on having a good day and keep exploring, everyone.
Yeah.
See?
Coming from me is try to learn something new every day. Go out there and discuss something new with somebody every day. Don't be a freaking NPC. And you need to be the star of your own life. Don't let everybody else in your life outshine you. And that's going to be my nice thing to say to you today. And I didn't really want to get into NPC talk with Zuri because that would probably go to another freaking 4 hours. We'll have him back on to talk about the NPCs. As always, if you would like to get a hold of any sort of cultivation supplies, whether it be grain spawn or substrate, you can get a hold of Deadpool on our Discord. Our Discord is FAFOCult. I will send the link. It will be in the show notes and descriptions. You can get a hold of us at our email. It's going to be fafocult@gmail.com. If you want to send us any sort of financials, money, tips, that kind of fun stuff.
Frontal nudity.
Yeah, we promise to use it for debauchery and to keep this podcast going. We do have expenses. That would be our Venmo would be FAFOCult. Our Cash App will be the $ FAFOCult. If you'd like to buy some interesting, cool FAFOCult-like stuff, you can go over to our Etsy. It'll be the FAFOCult on Etsy. And that link will be also in our Discord and also in the show notes. We'd like to thank Zuri for coming on today and giving this very kick-ass TED Talk. It was really, really fun, and we're all going to go back and harass him some more about it in the chat room. So y'all are welcome to come by anytime. Thank you, guys, and we love our listeners. Oh, by the way, we picked up a ton of listeners just in the last, 2 weeks in Australia. So we freaking love you, Australia. Australia now makes up 5% of our listeners. So I don't know what happened. I have no idea what happened in Australia, but there's we picked up 12,000 freaking listeners in Australia.
Really?
Well, we picked up 12,000 listeners, overall average in Australia.
So every Australian is listening to us right
now. And 4 kangaroos. Yeah.
Nice. I like it.
So that's pretty cool. So we've got Indonesia, India, and Australia are making up that whole area we got over there that's just really pumping out listeners right now. Love you guys. If there's anything in particular Australian-ish you'd like to come on and talk about, or Indian-ish, or Thailand-ish, yeah, come on and talk to us. We'd love to have somebody from over there on the podcast. And we love you guys. Love our listeners. Happy to have you, and we'll see you in the Discord.
Peace.